So, Arsenal have won the North London derby. It was a stroll in the end, 2-0 to Arsenal. They have gone 8 points clear at the top with 20 games to go in the Premier League season. Are they going to go and win the league? Who knows? They've given themselves a real chance with that win there, following City's defeat against Manchester United in the Manchester derby. That glorious win for Manchester United. And Arsenal will take on Manchester United next week in another big game as well. And today, you've got to look at Spurs being absolutely abysmal, but also the fact that Arsenal went there to Spurs' own ground, to the best stadium in the world, or whatever you call it, and absolutely dominated them, bossed them off the park. Antonio Conte was pulling his wig off. What was going on there? How are Spurs performing like that at home in a North London derby? I do not know what's going on. But Arsenal, very, very good today. Dominated the game. You could say maybe there's some weight of expectation, some pressure on them, especially after the City result, to extend that lead at the top. And they delivered a win. And even when Spurs were putting on a little bit of pressure in the second half, I don't think they ever really looked in trouble. And I don't think Spurs ever really looked like scoring. Gary Neville gave Ramsdale the man of the match. And maybe because kind of Arsenal sat off in the second half and he had a few saves to make, that's why. But I don't really ever feel like Spurs were going to score in that game. Yes, they had a few moments they could have said they were going to do better with. But Arsenal equally could have scored in the second half. So some of Spurs players have got to take a look at themselves and ask them what's going on. Son, where was he today? Absolutely anonymous. Maybe we should call him synonymous. What's going on with his performance? Abysmal today. Harry Kane was too busy fouling everyone in the second half. Kulusevski looked unfit in the second half. There was a few runs where you're thinking maybe you could get in. He didn't get in. And their midfield got absolutely bossed. Højbjerg was having a mare. Conte left Richarlison, Basuma and Perisic on the bench, which was a strange one. They look like a team that are going to change their manager soon, to be totally honest with you, because they're not performing for him. And Arsenal, on the other hand, are performing for their manager. They were in control. In the first half, they looked dangerous at every attack, pressing the hell out of Spurs. And their first goal came from a huge error by Hugo Lloris, which obviously destroys the atmosphere in a stadium. What's he still doing playing for Spurs, and they're number one, by the way? He's someone that they need to get rid of. Poor mistake from him. He makes mistakes on a regular basis now. And then their second goal came from an Odegaard strike, which was an absolutely fantastic strike. £35 million for him from Real Madrid, by the way. We were delighted with our signings, Varane and Casemiro from Real Madrid. Two fantastic signings for United. Odegaard, Arsenal pick him up from Real Madrid. I think they got an absolute bargain there. Huge signing for them. Is the captain out there. Scored a great goal. And bossed the midfield. Probably my man of the match. Although Saka gave Sessegnon nightmares. Sessegnon had a shocker. But Saka, every time he went at him, looked like he was going to do something. In that first half, I got to say, in the second half, Spurs were a little bit better. But I think that's because Arsenal kind of just sat off them. Allowed them to, hit them and tried to hit them on the counter-attack. Spurs had a few chances. Kane had one and all that. But never really did anything. The first half, it could have been 3 or 4-0. Partey smashes one off the post, which would have been one of the goals of the season. And they had a few other chances, Arsenal. But Spurs, abysmal. United now, who are in 4th place because of Newcastle's win today, are now 5 points clear of Spurs with a game in hand. So if we win that game in hand, we could be 8 points clear of Spurs, who will be in 5th. Are Spurs going to pick up points? I know there's still a long way to go in the season. We're only halfway there. Anything can happen in the second half. Form for both teams could completely flip. But Spurs don't look like closing that gap at the moment. And they look like a team that, Conte, I think eventually he gets sacked this season. Or at the very least at the end of the season. I don't think he's delivering. I think you could look at his squad and say, all right, maybe, it's a pretty poor squad. Eric Dyer, is he good enough? Doherty, I think Kulusevski, Kane, Son should be a great front three. You got Perisic and Richarlison on the bench. I think you should have goals in that team. But you could argue maybe their defence isn't good enough. But That's poor. They should be performing a lot better than they are. And it's not just in the Arsenal game. Arsenal are a very good team. They can do that to sides. They don't just look poor against Arsenal. They look poor every single game. Usually they're better in the second half to score a few goals. But today, never really threatened to, in my opinion anyway. And now Champions League football looks a myth. And Conte looks like he should be getting sacked. Arsenal, on the other hand, 8-point clear of City. 20 games to go. They've got to play City twice. But in this current form, and again I know form can change, you'd fancy them to get results against City. Unless City beat them twice, then you'd probably think, all right, City are favourites for the league. Arsenal might drop points elsewhere. But Arsenal have given themselves a real chance. Pep looks like he's cracking up at the minute, making all sorts of nonsense statements. He even made a statement yesterday about not wanting to win the league. I was thinking, what are you talking about? It's halfway through the season. Still a long, long way to go. You still got to play Arsenal twice, and you're talking stuff like that. So anything could happen. Anything could happen. As the weeks go by, they'll start to believe even more. Their fans will start to believe in it even more. And you could have like a Leicester kind of effect on their season. But you'd still think City has less chance than they did a couple of weeks ago. But as much chance. As for United, obviously, if we beat Palace and we beat Arsenal, which is big ifs at this moment in time, we'll be getting injuries and stuff like that. And our players are going to be fatigued this week. If we win those two games, I think we'd be. Let me have a look at the table. We would be, if we won our next two games, 44 points. We'd have played a game more than them, but we'd be 3 points behind them. Now, do I think United are in the title race? No, because again, I think we're going to get injuries. If we have it yesterday when Casemiro and Rashford went down, you could hear a pin drop. And I think any injuries to those players for United, it's curtains for us, because then we got to rely on the players that we relied on last season. So I do think it's a bit of a stretch for United, but top four's looking more of a certainty as the weeks go by, and hopefully we can keep this form going. And if we beat Arsenal, who knows what can happen. Who would have thought Arsenal would be 8 points clear at this moment in time? City will be hoping we beat Arsenal, they beat Spurs and beat Wolves, and then things will be looking a little bit better for them. So long way to go in the season, but I just think a few injuries to this United team, we're not going to make any more signings, and things are looking difficult. And you could possibly say the same with Arsenal. Although their first 11 is very good and they've got a few players in the squad, like no one would have expected Nketiah to be playing as well as he's playing. Like, if they have a few injuries to key players, then they've got problems. But at the moment, they don't seem to be getting injuries. They've got a week's rest now to that United game. And they'll be confident they can keep the run going. But United will be going to the Emirates and confident they can do something there. It's setting up a good game next week. But we got to focus on this Palace game first. Anyway, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. That game today, as good as Arsenal were, and I think they were very good, controlled it, bossed it. I thought Spurs were shocking, and for everything you'd say about a Conte side, that isn't it. That isn't it. So yeah, let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure you're keeping it locked. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. I'll be back soon. See you in a bit.